back to episode 3 of the fundamentals. Today we're going to go over proper posture and proper setup position in the golf swing. Don't forget to go back and check out episode 1 and 2 that went over 1, the warm-up, and then 2, core and ab progression. So what does it mean to have proper setup in the golf swing? So usually when we're looking at golfers, and I'll kind of tilt this way for you guys, we usually see too much of one, a flexion based or an extension based. So a lot of times you'll see someone grab a club and they go down and they're really slumped over. When we're slumped over, let's say I get in that position and I'm really rounded, so my back has more of an arch in terms of the upper half. It's going to be very hard for me to rotate around that because of how much flexion I'm already in. Same with the opposite. So if I'm too much, we call it lordotic posture. So if my pelvis is rotated too far forward, what'll happen is the same thing. I'm going to have a really hard time transitioning my golf swing because I can't rotate on that pelvis. If we go back and we look at episode 2, the core and ab progression, we went over how to perform a pelvic tilt, and that's going to be really crucial in terms of how to set up properly in the golf swing. We want to be pretty much neutral throughout, and we'll take a look at a couple different videos of some tour pros, also some amateurs as well, to see, okay, well, can we spot the differences between these swings to really see, okay, why is the pro moving so well versus why is the amateur having a hard time even setting up? Video of Adam Scott that we're going to look at slowed down. So big things I want you to focus on here. So this would be what we consider, a great setup. So remember how we talked about trying to get that pelvis to be more in a neutral state? Well, you can see when Adam Scott addresses the ball here, he doesn't round the back or excessively round this lower back here. So his upper back stays pretty much flat, which means his pelvis is hinging. So that hinge move, it's really important for us, especially at beginner stages, to get that, emphasized, because without the ability to keep this neutral, he's gonna, you have a hard time really rotating. So as he kind of comes up throughout the swing, I want you to notice a couple things too. So he didn't really move this much, so he maintained that neutral angle all the way up to midpoint, and then as you can see, he continues that same path to the top. So if we were to have drawn a line right here, we would have seen that line pretty much stay consistent. This is back in 2018, so we're going to look at a couple things with his posture back then and then fast forward to now. So we're going to play this, and notice before we do anything movement-wise, he kind of has that C posture that we're talking about. So he would be one where we would actually try to get him to rotate that pelvis more forward. So we'd rotate it clockwise, which would in turn increase some of the curve here, because right now it's that C, so it's flexed. You can see why we call it C posture, because of how much it mimics it. Now in relation to the Adam Scott swing, so take a look at that angle that he gets from this shoulder here. As he moves up, he lost that entire posture, and that could be because of a few things. Some part of it might have been he could not excessively rotate on that flex position, so he had to get that power or generate this motion from somewhere else, so you're going to lose that posture. And all of a sudden there's a bunch of other stuff going on. So we can do a lot of stuff in Charles' swing that would help improve him from the get-go. But let's go to the new swing now here and take a look at how he's looking now. So we'll go here. So you can kind of notice he's not as much of that rounded. He has a little bit of a straighter curve here, which is really good for him. It's going to allow him to rotate a little bit more. And as he goes back, let's take a look. I mean, look at that posture. I mean, my man's looking like Adam Scott over here. So obviously posture was a big thing for him, but let's pause it and look at the top swing. Look at his ability to now maintain that posture. If we just skip back, this is probably a 10-year difference at minimum. He can now rotate on that back right hip. That angle never changed, so he didn't lose his posture from the start to the end, which could have been just due to the fact that now he set up a little bit better. So as we watch the outcome of this, look at how much more balanced he is at the end versus the last time he was all over the place. For the most part, I usually see a lot more golfers in that flexion-based or too much of a curve of the upper body. So there's three main exercises we're going to go over today that's going to kind of combat that. The first one is I want us to be able to, one, find neutral. So again, go back in episode 2 and see if you can do that pelvic tilt in the position that's in that episode. But now we're going to kind of advance a little bit and do it in the actual setup. The first one I want to teach is an RDL, double leg. So what that essentially is trying to do is see if we can keep that upper back straight while sticking the butt out. So essentially we're doing a hinge pattern versus flexion would be I'm moving more at the top. Hinge is going to be I'm moving at the waist. Exercise number 2 is going to be an extension over a foam roller. So a lot of times when we're stuck in that flexion-based posture, and a lot of times we see this with a lot of people because one, we work at home nowadays because of COVID, and 2, a lot of desk jobs are around. If we're consistently hunched over, we're not working to get extension, and then I tell you to go do extension in the golf swing, you're going to have a really hard time doing that. All right, so before I get too into the video, I want to give a big shout out to 3D PT. So through 3D PT, that gives me the resource to screen you guys for free. So if you're ever interested in getting screened to see what things do you need to work on the most, just for you physically, then give us a shout out, at least message me or DM me, and we can get things kind of rolling, because this is what I want you guys to get out of this, is not only seeing what I have to offer in terms of knowledge, but also the thing is I want to be able to get my hands on you guys and see what is your main issue. What things do you need to work on that you get the most bang for your buck? Third exercise is going to look at how can we maintain that posture more at the top. So it'll be a rotational based exercise that we focus a lot on, trying to get that body to rotate while we move the arm. So that's going to be exercise number 3. Okay, so step 1 before I kind of go over RDL posture and setup is I want us to be able to find neutral. So again, go back and look at episode 2 because this is going to be a little bit more of an advanced position to find that. But when we get into a golf position here, so I'm going to act like there's a ball right in the middle here. When I tuck my pelvis forward, so I feel like I'm actually rotating downwards towards the floor. I'm increasing this curve versus if I do the opposite, I'm now decreasing that curve, or I'm doing the tilt in the opposite direction. Now when you're in this swing, take a picture of yourself and see, am I in more of a straight position from my shoulders all the way down to my hips? If you see any kind of rounding, that's going to limit how much you can rotate and get around that ball. So do a couple tilts in this position so you can get a sense of, okay, where am I at? Am I too far forward? Can I move out of that? If I'm having issues, and that's something that we can address. All right, so the first time in this series we're going to actually hold a golf club, which is great. I mean, who doesn't want to swing? So the bad news is we're not swinging. We're using it to work on an RDL. Eventually we'll get to the swing portion of things, but with this, we're going to put it over our back here. And the goal of this is I want you to feel like middle of your shoulder blades and right above your pelvis, so your low back, are going to be the 2 contacts of this club. So when I go over the top here, I feel the pressure of the golf club in between my shoulder blades and along my hip. Now, if I were to bend over like a lot of people, flexion-wise, see how that bottom point almost comes off of my pelvis? I mean, look at all this gap between my hand and the club. Versus if I learn to hinge, I mean, look at how much more neutral I am now. Work on getting this position here. So I'd work on just going up and down a few times to really learn, can I keep that pelvis in the correct position? Because great, if you're neutral here and then all of a sudden you're here, well, that's where your golf swing is going to be. All right, so exercise number 3. So we're feeling good about maintaining that posture, at least at the beginning, but we want to be able to keep that posture as we rotate. So what we'll do is we'll grab a little med ball here. We're going to get in that kind of setup that we talked about with exercise number 1, where we feel like we're in a neutral plane here. Then I want you to feel like you're rotating around this back hip. So don't think you're necessarily bringing the arm straight back. Think more I'm twisting around this hip here. So arms stay at the chest. I twist around. I'm facing you. Arms come out and then back. So that's teaching us, 1, getting around this back hip while keeping that posture. And then 2, my arms are going to be out here once I get into that golf swing. So can I maintain it? So again, rotate around that back hip, press, and back. So exercise number 2 here is going to be extension over a foam roller. So I have a half foam roller here. I usually like to place it right below my shoulder blade. So they shouldn't be on my shoulder blade, but they shouldn't be so low that it's really sitting in that arch. Arm's gonna go across, letting the body extend over top, and then back to neutral. Now, big thing here, I don't want these abs to kick in. This isn't necessarily a crunch, so don't feel like we're crunching against. This is more of letting the body extend and going to neutral.